What is up, Assassins? This is Gargudon for the ones who came before. Today we have the honor of finally having Sir Ezio himself with us here on the channel for a chat, Mr. Roger Craig Smith. Rog, thank
Hello.
you so much for taking the time to do this. We know you are a busy guy, and other than that, how is today treating you?
Today's great. It's I'm up in Idaho now, and it's extremely cold. We're having quite the cold snap right now, so it feels quite like winter.
Oh, same here.
Dumping snow outside, and it's
Idaho, yeah,
like 16 degrees, something like that. So it's
imagine.
nice, freezing
Must be
cold winter.
beautiful up there. Is it like in the foresty areas you live, or?
Not really. I mean, I'm in a neighborhood,
Okay,
but I moved to Idaho to be close to all of that stuff. So I'm in a
I
pretty good
see.
little spot. It's still a suburban neighborhood, but
Of
I've got
course.
foothills off in the distance there. So
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I can
it's
walk down to the river and that kind
close
of
to
thing.
Yellowstone and close to Big Sky Country and
I guess, yeah,
beautiful,
close
I
enough.
imagine.
Closer than when I was in California, yeah, for sure.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
I've yet to get to Yellowstone, but there's a lot of big sky. There's one of the reasons why moving
beautiful.
here was so great for the
Yeah,
photography and all
yeah.
that stuff. Yeah, so it's a good day. How about you?
Oh, I'm
It's a
fine as
good
well.
night.
It's pretty
Ready to,
cold as well. It's
okay.
winter dark, and yeah, that's just the northern winter for you.
Nice, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
that's what
yeah.
happens.
All right. Other than that, let's just get the show on the road.
Cool, cool.
So I wanted to start off talking a little bit about back in the day. Like, what was it that originally made you want to go into stand-up where you started, and then like switch paths into voice acting? How did that come
Money
about?
was the big switch. Only because,
Yeah,
or lack thereof, I should say. Yeah. So I was a pretty directionless kind of a dude, I guess, in my late teens, early 20s, and had always been drawn to things like comedy and being funny and being silly and being a character actor, and did youth theater, musical youth artist repertory theater, like my art, as it was known down in Orange County, California. And it was like I knew I wanted to be a performer. I knew I wanted to be in the world of entertainment somehow, but I didn't know what I was going to
yeah,
do. And then finally, I got a little bit old enough where people started going like, I mean, you're pretty funny. You should be a stand up kind of thing. You ever thought about it? And I finally was like, I'm at an age where I could maybe talk about some things. So tried it out, really enjoyed it, realized, okay, this is an interesting thing to attempt. This is kind of a cool thing to go try, and I liked the challenge of it. I liked the idea of like, ooh, what didn't work on that set and that kind of thing. So it was about writing, and it was about performing. And then on the advice of my high school theater arts instructor, she said, don't just do observational comedy, do comedy where you inhabit the character so that we as an audience can laugh with you and at you and that kind of thing. And the more I did that in my stand-up act throughout the years, the more the industry would start having professionals that would say, "Oh, you sound like you've got a radio voice. Are you a DJ, or do
okay,
you do like?" And then they were like, "Oh, those characters you do. Are you a improv guy? Are you a And I kept hearing cartoons, and a lot of people could say like, "Oh,
of
you do
course.
cartoons, right? And voiceover?" And I'm like, "No, no, no." And then after doing stand-up for a number of years and getting to travel doing it and kind of getting out on the road and realizing, oh man, this is a grind of a way to kind of like earn a living.
Yeah.
We were trying out for the Aspen Comedy Festival, and the woman that was there to evaluate us, she got we perform, the audience leaves, we get back up on stage, and then she, in front of our colleagues, just kind of gives us her advice, and she gets to me and goes, "Hey, who represents you for voiceover?" And I was like, Nobody." And she goes, "Oh, you do so many characters in your act. I thought you were a cartoon guy." And then she just moved on. She was like, "You should look into that or that kind of thing." I thought, well, there's like about as good of an industry professional that I can get from somebody who was there to evaluate my comedy and said, "Hey, you should go do this other thing." And so
Okay.
it was
So,
like okay, if she's telling me to go do this, I'm gonna look into it. I looked into it. I Googled. I called a couple agencies and said,
yeah.
how do you start? And they told me to take some classes, that kind of thing. I went and I did it, and I loved it, and then it paid. And suddenly I was like,
Oh,
oh,
of
I can make
course.
money doing this. And I felt like,
Yeah.
oh, this is like everything I enjoy. Screenwriting was my major in college. It's like stand up was my performing side, but it was like this was like, oh, it's me and a microphone and entertaining somebody on the other side of that glass, and I get to do more acting than I would
Of
with
course.
stand
Yeah,
up. And
yeah.
yeah, that was it. And then it was paying, and I thought I'm going to go make money doing this. That would be lovely
I
because
see.
comedy is a really tough row to hoe.
So essentially, it was kind of like an accident, like pursuing this one thing, but making all those connections, and then I might as well follow up on that and kind of go
Yeah,
into like voice acting.
but
Yeah.
doesn't life go that way? I mean, like so many things. I tell people all the time, my own high school theater arts instructor, she said, the path is never linear. And she was like,
Of
look at what
course.
you've done. She's like, you didn't set out. She goes, when you were in high school, you weren't thinking you were going to be a cartoon actor or a video game voice. And I was like, no, I had no idea what I was going to do. I just knew I didn't want to be stuck in an office.
That
And
makes perfect sense.
yeah, I think everybody kind of, I don't know many people who, I don't know many happy people, I should say, who
Okay.
set out to do this one thing and then they never, deviated, and because they had convinced themselves that at some point they had to go do this one thing, and so there they are doing that one thing. And I think that's how you wind up with a lot of people kind of going into like law
Of
school, getting out
course.
of law school and
Yeah,
going,
yeah. Like
I don't want to do it.
some of the best jobs I've had are also the ones that you kind of like get by accident. Like, oh, this
Yeah.
person knew this person, and then they like let you work at their bar, which turns out to be an amazing time.
Yeah. And you never know the connections that you're going to be able
Of
to
course.
make, and the things you
Especially in
might,
showbiz.
all that stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's interesting. And then like when you made that full switch, which is like 20 years ago time now or something,
Yeah.
uh
It's great.
when was it like the road to Ezio started like forming? Like how did you get that gig?
So that was, I mean, like, it's so funny when people ask questions about how did you get it, and it's always like
Yeah,
the
yeah.
boring answers. I auditioned. I showed up. In fact,
Okay.
I remember, Amanda Wyatt, our director on that, she still gives me grief for it because
Yeah, yeah.
I recall that I showed up on a Friday night at like 6 o'clock or something like that. It was like a late
Okay.
audition kind of a thing, and did something like, and I think I auditioned at that time. I was reading about the character and I'm like, oh, this is interesting. And I was like, well, I go, Italian's pretty specific. And I go, I can maybe try like a Spanish. And she goes, just give us what we're trying to find is these three age ranges. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like what would the age ranges be? And so we started playing with that in the initial audition. And then just, I don't remember the lines that we were doing and anything like that. And I think I was just doing like a bad sort of Spanish accent at that time. Um,
Oh, right.
and she was like, it's okay because like we've tried to find a number of different actors of all these different backgrounds, that kind of thing. She goes, it's really about this age range thing because they're looking to have one actor play these three different, styles. And I was like,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
She goes, and they're going to
Exactly.
work with, even if you were authentic Italian, they would work with a dialect coach because they wanted to make sure that it was going to be authentic to that
Of
time era
course. Yeah,
and
yeah.
time period and that kind of thing. So she's like, they're going to have a dialect coach. And I'm like, okay. And so I just auditioned and I did this, probably a bad Antonio Banderas, kind of an impression. And she said no, they loved it. They loved that you could do the three different ages.
Of
And so because I
course. Yeah,
think we
yeah.
started, with like young Ezio, when he was, it is a good
Yeah,
life.
yeah. Yeah,
And
yeah, of course.
then of course, like when he goes to something more, and then of course when he's old and
Yeah,
he's
yeah, exactly.
a young man, all
So
that stuff. So
imagine like the Italian dialects coaching and like maybe even lessons. Was that like one of the more memorable challenges of bringing him to life? Were
I
there
guess
any others?
like the whole thing, like working with Ida Darvish, who was my dialect coach on AC2 and halfway through Brotherhood, and then Peter Arpacella, was just like getting to be with really, really awesome human beings. Peter is an incredible actor in his own right. I mean, it's like and not to say that I am an incredible actor in my own right, but Peter has been a phenomenal performer, and he's so gifted and talented. And for him to be helping me throughout, Brotherhood and into Revelations, with the dialect and the accent, and also probably cringing at some of the
Yeah.
sort of freedoms that we take with it. Because I've had people go like, "Oh, your Italian is so great," and I go, "No, it's not."
No,
I
it's
go,
not. It
I go,
actually, yeah, it's
language.
actually like a you put this into Google Translate and it actually says something completely different. Or
And there's a lot about that because we talked about it a lot, saying, I've
yeah,
always made the joke that I watched a lot of like MotoGP racing at the time, and Valentino Rossi was the world champion as the MotoGP bike rider,
oh
and
yeah,
he's
yeah,
authentically Italian. And so his post-race interviews were always very Italian, like it was a good race, the bike are very fast, the corner is a little, yeah,
yeah,
the
yeah.
corner is a little bit wet and slick, but I find the bike very good at grip, the grip good on the bike. And I was thinking, okay, I don't think this is what they want
Yeah, yeah.
antagonist, or sorry, their protagonist to sound like. And so we started kind of like blending, like literally working together to say like, okay, well, would we pronounce the H's this way? What would the old school Italian approach to this be? So we uncontracted things that were contracted very often, as much as we could. Um, there was so working with Ida and getting to have her in the booth with me on the big thick authentic lines of Italian where I was saying stuff in Italian. She would like say it like slowly so I could get all the pronunciations, like take requiescat in pace, like it would
Yeah,
be very
yeah.
slow, like requiescat in pace, okay. And then we would finesse it into a performance and that kind of thing. She'd give me the thumbs up. I'd perform it for Amanda, our director. She'd give the thumbs up. Patrice Desolé would give us the thumbs up, or we would just keep working. So it was getting to work with such really, really cool people, and getting to work with Peter on this stuff, and just forming a bond and like a friendship with all of
Of
them.
course. Yeah, yeah.
It was a blast, and it was a challenge, I guess, in that I didn't know this character. That was also kind of a blessing that it was like it's not like stepping into the role of like Batman or Sonic where you've got legacy characters that other people have portrayed in the past, so you're going to be
Yeah, yeah.
compared.
It's an original character, and
Yeah,
you
you need
get
to
to
live
keep
in
it.
this
Yeah.
box. Yeah, it's like, well, we're building the box that Ezio is going to live within right now, and it was like, so it was neat to kind of become this
Of
character,
course.
or I never become my characters, but it was neat to tackle this thing from that standpoint, and just to get to know these really really creative and incredibly talented people that were behind the scenes that were helping to create this character. I mean, like everybody at Ubisoft, everybody that worked on the production side of things, it was like it's all in there with Ezio. It's Jesper's music. It's like all that
Yeah,
stuff
exactly.
is what creates this character. The
Of
visuals,
course.
all that stuff. So it was like it was challenging but so gratifying. And to this day, 15 years later, I'm just like, man, what a
Yeah.
trip. Who would have
What a
known? Who would
journey.
have known?
Yeah.
We had no clue.
It
We had
is
no
that
clue.
like iconic character and kind of like, yeah, an actor who has had like a protagonist on a long running show or something. In that sense, like I imagine like with the years, not only did Ezio develop, but I imagine you grew with the character as well. Like you form that family of working together in so many years.
I guess it's so
Yeah.
weird. Like it's a very different experience. I think it's kind of it's sort of a sad thing. My enjoyment of the entertainment industry now, it has been so tainted by having worked in it for this long
Yeah,
that
yeah.
I experience films and productions and projects in a way where I just go, huh, I wonder what they were doing that for, or I wonder if that was a budgetary thing, or I wonder if they considered this or that, or what might have happened there, that kind of thing. It's my experience is usually very brief and very quick, and you are cranking through lines of dialogue, and sometimes you're jumping all over the place. So very often you feel quite disconnected, believe it or not. It's never a linear approach to recording. It's not as if we
No,
started at the
no.
very beginning of Ezio and went all the way through. It's like sometimes they don't have that script finished, so they jump to the end of the game,
Yeah,
because that
yeah.
sequence was already done, and they know what they want to do with that. And this modular kind of like weird disconnected like puzzle pieces that get thrown around. And so yeah, it's I remember being in the trenches is what it feels like, because you're just sort of like you come together, everybody works very hard for a very short period of time, and it's very intense,
Yeah.
and then you all go away, and then the thing comes out, and everybody else experiences it in a way that they then share what their experience was like with you, and
Yeah,
I
of
never know what it's
course.
going to be. I don't hear the music when I'm recording. I don't
Oh
hear other
yeah.
actors when I'm recording. It's rare to get a chance to interact in that way. So
Okay.
you're just kind of by yourself as you're in your head and imagining all these things, and then it comes out and it's nothing like you imagine, and you
Yeah.
experience it the same way players do, with a little degree of some differences in there because you lived it. And it's like like listening to something that I've done and going, oh God, that's what I sound like, or that's how I said that line.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I
do
imagine.
better.
Yeah, it must have been like what, 2, 3 like years straight of working on the same character.
Probably
Or
about, yeah.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
the
Over
same
three
character but with
games.
variations. Like he kept changing. It was like,
Of course.
Brotherhood was a departure from AC2, and then Revelations was a
It was
complete
a
departure. And
complete
then
like yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That
And
was
then
interesting in
Embers
this.
was even more.
Oh,
It was like
oh.
even more that he's tired and old, and
You remind me, I got to rewatch that soon.
mm,
But yeah, Revelations alone was quite the change in the sense that this like third installment, like the conclusion, like there's no characters from the previous games or anything. It's a completely new setting. How was that going to work? Pretty well,
yeah.
as
Well,
it turned out.
yes. Thankfully it worked well enough. Yeah, no, it was remarkable. It was really one of those things where, and I think it's such testimony to when a game company wants to take their time and because I think there were 3 years between AC1 and AC2, because they wanted to go back, and they were sort of critically lauded for a really ambitious title, but that there were a lot of repetitive kind of things. The fight mechanics of the controls and that kind of thing weren't what they wanted. So
Yeah.
they really worked a lot of that stuff out, and then all of a sudden they were just like, let's just create a new character. And it was like it was literally like, this is either going to sink the entire thing, or it's going to become that it's a hit. And I never would have known. I never. I was just, as with anything I've ever done and continue to do to this day, I never go in thinking, oh, this is gonna be huge. I just kind of go, I hope people enjoy what I've done. I hope my director is happy with what I'm doing. I hope the fans like what we've achieved as a team. And it's like, and so when it does come out, and when that came out and it was a big hit, and then all of a sudden, I think what was originally intended as DLC became what Brotherhood became. So
Yeah.
they were like, hey, we got a big game, and we got enough of this. We could probably build a little bit more around it and make an entirely new game, make more money, I'm sure.
A perfect sequel, yeah.
Yeah, it was great. So it's like, I never count on any of that stuff. It's the same thing, I mean, 15 years of Sonic the Hedgehog is the same thing. It's like,
Of
what
course,
the
yeah,
heck?
yeah.
It's
Of
crazy.
course.
Yeah.
It makes me think, like, how was it returning also to the character fairly recently with the Nexus VR? That must have been fun, like coming back to your
It
baby
was
after so long.
it was neat. It was neat, and it was nerve-wracking because it's a different crew. Obviously, the people that I worked with are no longer there, and it's like, and it was
Oh
one of
yeah.
those things where like, oh yeah, I hold this character in a certain sense, in a certain way, but I'm going to be working with people who maybe don't, or haven't, or it's a complete different project, completely different crew, that kind of thing. So it was wild. I felt a lot more nervous about it because I also didn't get to work with a dialect coach on that particular game, so
Oh,
I
it's
was a
just
little bit like,
about remembering everything,
yeah, yeah.
practicing and again and such. Yeah, yeah.
Yes. And so it's a trip, like going back and like listening to like stuff that I had done, going back to like probably working on this in 2008. Um, you know, uh, to go back and listen to like some of the early AC2 stuff and go, man, I can't believe
Of
that was,
course.
it's like, wow, he was a little higher pitched than I remember him. Like, I always go through like something like, to
Very low octave. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
like, no, it wasn't like that at all. Like, if I'm right here, it's like a little bit better. And I was like, oh, how funny. It's like,
Of
my brain
course.
always tends to drop. I think it's because I'm nervous and I'm like, oh, I can't do that voice anymore. Or, like it's all the insecurities that actors deal with where you're like, so I got to push it low. I got to go low.
Yeah, yeah. I
That
get
low.
that.
You were never that
It-
low to begin with. It's like,
yeah.
that kind of thing.
No,
So, but it was a
it must have
blast
been
getting the character.
it must have been fun, yeah, coming back and yeah, exploring like this new chapter of Ezio's life and seeing like everyone's favorite Leonardo, like the way we know him from
Leonardo.
paintings, like the big white beard
Yeah.
and such. So
Yeah. No,
it must have been
it's
pretty
cool. I
fun.
I would keep my fingers crossed. I have no idea. I mean, like the Animus is an interesting thing. I suppose we could always revisit other memories or elements or that kind of thing. Have we really seen all of Ezio's story? I would have no idea. I mean, it would be fun to think that there could be something someday where we get a. I don't know. I know that they've been saying that they're going to go back and redo and remaster a lot of the games, but they started, I think, with AC4. I think they started with Black Flag, which I was in,
There's
which
rumors
was
circulating.
Oh, yeah, well, I think they've already announced that. I think it was either three or four. It was announced that they're going to remaster.
I'm not
That was
sure.
a press release, like
Okay.
officially at one point. And I was laughing about that because I know that I was in that one as was it Rogerio or
Ruggero Ferraro. Yeah, yeah, the ambassador who is
and
also
that was
native
Darby.
Florentine.
That was Darby having a little bit of fun,
Yeah, yeah.
as well as one of the Abstergo employees who butchers all the names of the.
Hmm.
There's like some Abstergo video files, and you
Yeah.
hear me as narrating that, and literally intentionally like butchered Ezio's name as like Enzo,
I think you know what you're talking about. That
Enzio or
was
something like that.
you? What?
Yeah. So that was
Yeah, the
again
the
Darby,
ones the marketing pitch
exactly.
sales.
And he's like, with
I can
this
kind of I can kind of
Enzo
hear it now that you say it actually.
da Firenze,
Yeah,
all
yeah.
that. So there were fun little elements to like to still do stuff like that, but yeah, no, it's a trip. It's a
Yeah,
strange
yeah.
industry. It's a strange way to make a living, and it's a strange thing to realize you can't go back.
Of course,
It's
it.
pretty rare that you get people that are consistently throughout a production or stay at a game
Yeah,
company
yeah.
that long.
That's
So
one of
yeah,
the things about voice acting that I would say few can honestly do is that like complete control over their voice, changing it to so many things. Like, what are some of your like techniques, call it that, if you will, to kind of yeah change registers and pitch?
I don't know. Like I honestly don't know. Like, how do you explain something that just feels, I guess, very natural, or just something that I've been doing
Yeah.
ever since I was a little kid, just like mimicking and trying to emulate and trying to do impressions, or try to like, if there was another kid at school who had a raspy voice, I'd be like, ah, that kid sounds cool. I want to sound like him, and maybe it was just things like that, trying those things out
Of
as a
course.
kid, and then all of a sudden getting into, I mean, the joke that we often make is that everything that got us in trouble in school is what we get paid to do for a living now. But no, I don't have any techniques. I mean, there's old
Just that.
standby things of like, you change your body posture. I
Yeah.
stand when I work, so when I sit, I have a harder time, um, getting certain ranges because
Of
my
course.
diaphragm is squished, by sitting down, that kind of thing.
Oh
Um,
yeah. It's
but
all the yeah. It's an
Yeah,
art form, really,
and
and
then there's, if you're gonna like remember what it was like to be in a certain character, it's like, you just, I usually have like a catchphrase and then like a laugh, things like that, so that kind of helps you lock into, like, the character. But it's usually, I mean, I've been doing a ton of accent training lately, um, and my instructor has said, look, the idea of people just saying, "We'll just do this accent," it's like, you don't really, like, when you think about it, if you're gonna do any accent, you're still going to create a character
yeah.
around what you have to conjure up. Like, well, if you want me to sound British, like, where? How old am
Where?
I? Where did I grow up in the UK? Like,
Of course, yeah,
is
yeah.
this like North London? Am I, it's like, am I Northern Territory? Am I Southern Territory? Is it like, and now do we get into classisms and
Yeah,
class
I can
systems?
imagine.
Like, is this person, of the upper crust of, it's like, is this pre 1945? Is this,
Yeah,
post
yeah.
all those things, and
It's
it's like, it's physicality and
yeah.
mental radio
So
stations of mental
kind of like
theater.
some of the techniques that go into other voice arts, like singing, I imagine, like all sorts of little
Absolutely.
techniques, and just such a unique art. I mean, someone else who comes to mind who's like the master of it is, Seth MacFarlane,
Oh
who,
yeah.
like, when you
Oh
watch
yeah.
Family Guy or something, he's like, that's also him.
Yeah.
Speaking of, like, that was when you took me by surprise. If you remember that episode of American Dad you did,
Oh yeah.
where
Guy
you were
Fieri.
Guy Fieri.
Yeah. Yeah.
I saw your name in the credits, like, what? That's
Oh
him?
yeah. Oh yeah. It was like a bad butchering. It was like, oh
Yeah,
yeah, going to Flavor Town, baby. Yeah. It was like something like that. I taste the sausage. I got fennel. Oh yeah, that's
yeah,
so good. Oh,
exactly.
going straight to flavor. And the guy doesn't sound that way, but it's like, it was more just, they wanted
Yeah,
to kind of
yeah. I mean,
Guy
I would have
Fieri.
thought it was Guy himself, but
Oh yeah, right.
not that I've ever
Yeah,
really heard his voice. But
exactly.
that was a great little gem.
That's pretty funny. That was a
Yeah,
lot
yeah,
of fun. I took a
yeah, yeah.
picture next to Roger the alien, Roger Smith, because like I
I was
checked.
just about to say it. You
Yeah,
technically share the same name.
I checked in to get ready for the session. Yeah, and Roger. And so I check in, and they're like, oh, can I get your name? I go, it's Roger Smith, and they're like, really? And they brought out a big standee of the character Roger, and they're like, you gotta take a picture next to Roger. And I was like, that I do. So I've got it somewhere on my phone. I think,
Oh, we
yeah,
got to see that. Yeah, yeah. Oh,
I'll
that's a
search
great
for it
story.
as you ask me your next question. I'll see if I can.
That's great. Yeah, it was kind of back to, the man himself and what kind of legacy, the character Ezio has created, because it's no it's truth that, he's out there as one of the all-time video game greats, but how would you say that legacy's looked upon today?
Um, it's kind of incredible. It's neat to see that, like, that he. I mean, getting to be a part of or getting close to anything where you start to realize, oh, this is almost like this figure, this character is almost iconic to the industry of video games because everybody's familiar with Assassin's Creed. They've seen the
Yeah,
music,
yeah,
the visuals, the costumes, the character design. They're also very stylized and so recognizable.
of
Um,
course.
yeah, it's incredible to think that Assassin's Creed became what it became, and it's even crazier to think that, that as this Scotch Irish guy, that I got to voice this incredible, Renaissance era badass Italian assassin dude. It's amazing to think that that character went on to become something pretty iconic to the entire franchise as it is.
Of course.
Um, And I
And
was
it's
super
not.
fortunate. They went 3 games with that and a little short film and all that, when it's like most of them were kind of like one and dones, for the story from there on out. But yeah, it was, it's neat to think they stuck with Ezio for a while and that he's remained kind of, such a big part of the franchise ever since. It's,
It
that
is.
legacy is crazy. And I can't take credit or anything like that. It's like, there's so many people that work so
Yeah,
hard on these
yeah.
things to make these
It's
things
the
come to life.
writers, it's the directors, and then you
Everything.
bring into life.
Sort of, yeah, with great writing and great music and great
Of course.
editing and great animation and great lighting and great, it's like it's all of that stuff. It's like
Yeah,
all of
yeah.
that plays into it. If the music was crappy, nobody would care. Like if the voice acting was crappy, but the music was great, that would not be good either. So it's like it's a massive collaborative effort, and I'm very fortunate to be a part
Of
of it. And it's
course.
great to hear things like the legacy of that character is like, oh my god,
Because
I
it
have
is
nothing.
true, yeah. He's up there, yeah, not just in the franchise, but up there with like Nathan Drake, Kyle Johnson, and Mario, like
Yeah,
those all-time
yeah,
greats video game
crazy.
characters.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
lightning has struck far too many times in my career for getting to do things like Ezio, for getting to do things like Sonic, for getting to do things like Batman and Captain America and Apex Legends and Chris Redfield, Resident Evil, like these massive franchises and series and all the kids entertainment and stuff and being part of Disney films and things. It's wild. I
Of
mean,
course.
I would have never thought in a million years that I could have had the career that I've had, and so I wasn't, I think it was just fun to get to work and get to go to a job and get to feel like I was doing something and being a part of something. And it's like then all of a sudden you turn around and you're like 20 years into a career looking around going like, "Man, 15 years ago that game came
Wow,
out."
yeah, yeah.
Nuts. Like that's nuts. And I didn't know what I was sitting on back then. I was just hungry and wanting to feed myself. It's like that's yeah, so
Yeah,
it's
yeah. It is just creating, yeah, that have it landing that big iconic character early on. And that's kind of,
yeah.
yeah, your defining badass, I guess.
It's a
Um,
wild ride.
the Assassin's Creed community itself, which is undoubtedly one of the most like iconic gaming communities out there. What are some of your favorite things about that? And fans showing their passion, often through number of fan projects, whether it's music or art or cosplay or anything like that.
That's easily the wildest thing about being a part of any sort of a successful franchise is that you and again it goes back to what I when you were asking me earlier about like being a part of the production.
Of
And
course,
it's
yeah.
like, yeah, I mean, you can imagine, like, for me, I am fixated and focused on and trying to execute a performance that satisfies what my director is asking. Very often, I don't know the entirety of the story. I don't know the breadth of the background characters that I'm interacting with. I don't know. It's like, and it's almost impossible to know all of that. It would take too much time. They don't want to pay you for that, so it's like or they don't want you to have all that knowledge because you might do something stupid like tweet it out or make a mistake.
Yeah,
And so,
yeah.
so I experienced this from a very small little window, and then all of a sudden the game comes out, and if it becomes a success, like the Assassin's Creed franchise, then maybe I find myself at a convention someday, and then I get to hear from the fan base and realize that oh they got to experience this in a very different way, meaning they know nothing about what that recording session was like that day. They know nothing about how I was feeling sick or he was getting over a cold or just was so exhausted because it's like or really frustrated with trying to get that pronunciation right or cringing every time I hear my performance because it just sounds like ah that's the worst accent ever, all these things that we do. It's like they just get to go in, fire up their console
See the
and
final
play
product.
and like and lose themselves into it, and then you realize like hey,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
helped me get through a really rough time in life, or I
Yeah.
identify with this character and
That's
here's why.
amazing.
And so much, yeah. Or my father who's no longer with us, he and I used to play this game together, or that kind of. It's like you hear these stories and you recognize the impact. So it's one of the absolute best things about getting to be a part of something that becomes successful like that is just getting to hear and getting to realize that oh yeah, that's right. I have a job and I execute on my job, and my job is to do what the best that I can, and try to be a competent performer for these characters and for these roles and all that. But I forget that it gets put out there and gets consumed in a very different way than what I've experienced it. And so it's kind of fun to kind of like listen to go like, oh no way, that's how funny. That's
Yeah,
what was going on there. And I don't think no one's really as good to know how everything is always going to be received. And so everybody's kind of just throwing stuff against the wall and hoping it sticks for a lot of this industry. But if you got passionate people who really want the best and want to try to throw the best piece of something to, see if it sticks against the wall,
of
then you
course.
wind up with like, a really good feedback from the community. It's like there's just nothing better. And then all the fan art, all the I mean,
Cosplays
it's kind of
and
wild. It's
such.
really great. That a lot of that is there's phenomenal writing, great gameplay, and great music that just makes for a really great video game. And the fact that it's well written to where I get to step in and kind of just, do what I do, and get attention for it, which is deeply unfair to a lot of the people who work so hard on these games. But I get it from the standpoint too of like, hey, they might hear that sort of tangible representation of this character in my voice. And so if I meet somebody at a convention or just, in general, if I do something for a friend, over the phone or that kind of thing, to hear people freak out because they've spent
Yeah, yeah.
hundreds of hours playing this game, whereas I spent a lot of time working on it. But I mean, we literally like it's like you go through lines like this. It's like okay, we recorded the death scene of this, and now Ezio's distraught. Okay, and this next one he's doing battle with. It's like that's how sessions are. So you're switching gears all,
All
for
the
four
time.
hours.
So it's yeah, it's
You
a
never get a sense
mess.
of anything.
It's a mess behind the scenes, but
Yes.
in the end, like the final product, us players just get to sit with that, and that is what leaves the impact in the
Yeah,
end.
and it's cool. I love hearing from it. It's like, and then seeing the passion that people have over fan art and things like that, and they'll sew things, and and look, I nerd out and collect as many little things as I can as
Yeah,
well, so
yeah.
statues
Little
and things like that. So yeah,
little career wall, yeah.
I'm
But
still
no,
trying to
there,
find that thing where I posed with. I thought I created a folder on my in my photos to get it because it was such a funny shot. If you see me looking down, I am still listening to what you're saying. I'm just trying to
it's
find
all
that.
right. Yeah, there is just no doubt that yeah, if yeah, whether it's a game or a film or a show, if it can create that kind of following, that kind of like dare I say cult following, that pop cult status, there's just no doubt that I've also talked to others on here about that. Is that then you've got a great character and you've got a great legacy, even after all this time.
And a character isn't just in the voice. It's just, I mean, it's like you can hear it in the voice, and so I think we kind of go, wow, that's so crazy. It's like it's a neat thing to hear somebody do a really good impression of somebody else that they know. If they've got an actor that they think is so great, and somebody does their best, what you name it, right? Like we love that novelty. But I mean, character is in so many different things other than just the writing, or other
Of
than just the voice.
course,
It's the writing, it's the animation, it's the lighting, it's the character design, it's the music, it's all that kind of stuff. So it's yeah,
of
it's
course. Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
lucky to be known as the voice of when it comes to things, but I didn't create that character. It's like I'm one enhancement of it in some way, hopefully, uh, and hopefully not a detraction, but
But
uh,
he
but it's
wouldn't
still
have been the icon he is without you bringing him to life. Gotta
all
get
right.
gotta give yourself some
Fine.
credit.
I'm amazing. You're absolutely right. I'm incredible. I should have just said like, what
Yeah,
was it like? It was amazing, and they were lucky to have me because I'm so damn good.
yeah, yeah,
Enjoy it.
yeah. Yeah.
Thank
I guess to kind of wrap the character there, if you've probably maybe you've gotten this question before, but if there was like one or two lines, like of Ezio's, which
you.
ones would be your favorites to this day still?
Yeah. Well, my absolute favorite moment, and even just from a recording standpoint, was when he stands up in the town square and
Oh,
says, the Auditorio are not dead.
oh
I'm still
yeah, in the
here,
beginning there,
Ezio." And I
that
loved
or
that.
some of
It's
the
such a great
epic
moment.
speeches there, like also in the town square, but what 22 years later with
Not
some
follow
people
me
are
or
there.
anyone else. Yeah.
Yeah, like if it hadn't been
Vulnerability
for
too,
these people and such.
as human.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
no, the
those
Revelations opening, those monologues.
The monologues there's little bits of that. I do remember thinking I wish I could have gotten a second pass at the final speech in Embers, but we were running out of time and we literally did that. I think that was just like kind of one take. And then I was like, okay, I wrapped my brain around it, and they're like, we got to go, we got to wrap this up.
It
Because
was,
they're sort of like, yeah, it was crazy, and I'm like,
yeah,
ah. And again, those are the kinds of things that just happen in a production, and it's
yeah.
like, because
Well,
expensive as hell.
It was terrible anyway. So
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's the one steaming
no, it
pile
was
of
epic. It's like
no.
that
But
that
imagine for
ending
me, I
speech
hear
is
it,
one of their most iconic, yeah, most
but I want to do it better.
heartfelt.
I want to
I
do it
always
even
get
more
that.
heartfelt. Yeah,
I always get that. Like I can always also record some guitar or something. I'm like, listen to it later. I should have done that differently. I should
should have
have,
done that.
yeah, double tracked it or put different effects on or
And
something.
yet, and yet everybody
That's
else goes,
art.
"Sounds great, man. Come on, like it sounds great. What are you talking about?" You're like, "No, no, man. There was too much reverb, or
Yeah,
I should have
yeah,
gone with a different pickup." It's like, no,
yeah,
that's not
yeah.
right. Yeah,
Nah, yeah, yeah.
it's that. I mean, there is a lot of that. There is a lot of that. I would say but if those two moments for me, most especially, is just the Auditorio Not Dead. I remember looking at the engineer and kind of going, "Hey, I'm going to be quite loud on this," and uh, I think I still, because I said, "Look, this is a very big moment for this character." I said because he just watched his family, the men in his family get murdered in front of him, and now he just finally got that taste of revenge and of avenging, the death of his
Yeah,
family.
yeah.
And I'm like, and so I was like, I think this is him shouting it to as much the bad people as much as it is to the world,
Yeah.
and it's him kind of just like it's a shirt ripping moment of like,
Yeah, yeah.
oh, I'm coming
The
for all of
engineer was
you.
like, that's the money take right there.
And it was like I did it once and blew out they
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
have the
That's the
gain turned
take.
down enough, and I was like, okay, let's go again because I was like, I'm gonna be loud. I go, I think it should just be he is screaming this to the heavens. So I loved that moment, and then I did love the speech in
Yeah,
Embers.
yeah.
I just thought,
It makes
like
me
back.
curious. Has there ever been a kind of like you hear when with films sometimes like that take was perfect, but the mic wasn't on. We have to do it again.
Happens all the time. Happens all the
Yeah.
time. I mean, it's like, or it's like for whatever reason today, like my computer decided to be super weird, and I was just getting these weird things. Where all of a sudden, like in the middle of a session, the Zoom froze, and then it was as if like earlier in the session, my waveform stopped happening. It stopped
Oh
like
yeah, yeah,
waveform, but it was recording the audio. It's just no waveform. So I'm like stopping, saving, restarting the machine. It's like things happen. Like every now and then you're just like, I have no idea what was something didn't like something about today's, the
yeah.
gremlins in the machine.
Because
And
there's
it
so
can
many
happen all the
stories
time.
of that. Like the best scene in a show, like the actors crying, showing all their emotion, but like we're not doing that again. Yes, we are. The camera wasn't rolling, and like
Camera
this
wasn't rolling,
can, and that
or
comes
they're
back to
doing
the thing you said. It in the end, what matters is just what we see, and not the all the behind the scenes technicalities and problems or whatever that might be.
it's true. And I mean that's the weird part about art though too, is that regardless of how you experienced it or what you might be thinking, the reality is in the end it's going to be consumed in a way that it's going to be consumed, and you really don't have much control over it. I always laugh about Sting when he tells people that when people play like Every Breath You Take at their wedding, and he's like, that's a song about a stalker, right? Like that's
Yeah,
somebody stalking someone, like, and people, everybody just like, I'll be watching you, and it's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, it's so romantic. You're like, no, it's pretty cryptic, or not cryptic. It's pretty criminal. it's
It's funny you
and
say
so you can't. That's why I just say, if for me, my approach to this whole entire thing is just, what is the director asking of me, and can I trust that they know what's best because they've been listening to the client. The client has probably brought the director in weeks before I ever show up, and that they've expressed everything to the director about what they're hoping to have the overall feel and vibe of the game be, and that kind of thing. So I just got to trust in my director, and I just
of course.
I try to make sure that I execute for that. And it's like, and so I just go very small in that way, to be like, okay, this is what they're asking for, and I'll ask a lot of questions to kind of, and I make suggestions, and I'll push back if I feel like it's stepping out of the bounds of a character. I've done that many times with characters like Sonic and Batman and Ezio and that kind of thing. It was, it's just after you've done it for long enough, you realize I'm not trying to be difficult. I want to give the best possible product that I can.
Makes perfect
Um,
sense. Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, but even then, as soon as it comes out, it's just like, I don't know. I don't know what they're gonna do with it.
Of
I
course.
mean, it can
It's funny
happen.
you say Sting at weddings, like back to what I mentioned Family Guy before. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's like a joke. You can never understand what Sting is saying except like the last two words. Vano sta for
Oh,
the
yeah,
adun the fields of gold. Singing at
yeah,
a wedding.
exactly. Yeah, that's funny. That's right. That's Ten Sumner's Tales, right? Like that was
Yeah,
his.
yeah.
Because his real name is Gordon Sumner, right? Isn't that?
I
I
would
think
know,
that's right. Yeah,
probably.
his real name, I think, like Google me wrong, but I think his real name is Gordon Sumner, or like Summoner, and I think that 10 Summoner's Tales album that was a play on his last name. But yeah, this kid was
Yeah,
like,
I don't understand what he's saying.
proud of eyes and found in fields of gold. Yeah, that's pretty funny.
Yeah,
That's pretty
yeah,
much the thing.
yeah.
A lot of vocalists get away with that.
Yeah. To maybe slowly wrap things up, if you can tell us anything, of course, what is next for you? If you can tell us anything, and are there any further like green projects or milestones you want to get in the book?
Oh man, no. I can. Well, the answer is no to both of those, really, because there's not much
Okay.
I can tell you about. We've got Dying Like the Beast. I mean, like it's
Oh,
nothing. If there was anything Assassin's Creed related, I could not share that with you. So
that
I
makes
know that,
perfect sense.
which is another one of those things where you're like, well, 10 years ago, Dying Light 1 came out and it became
Yeah.
a hit zombie game. And here we are 10 years later, and they want me to bring me back and have me do more as Kyle Crane. So Dying Light the Beast will be coming, I think, summer of this year.
Okay. We'll
Um,
be looking
you
forward to that.
I got my fingers crossed. We had the VR game for Ezio. I've got my fingers
Nexus.
crossed or with Ezio in that VR game on Nexus. I'd love to see them explore more with the character of Ezio. I would have no idea if they're going to or if they can. But we just did a VR game as Batman for Batman
Oh,
Arkham Shadow,
sounds
and it's
fun.
done really well, and it's like I'm just so tonight's the Dice Awards, and it's up for a bunch of awards that are even outside of it being like a VR nomination, which is really cool. Like I believe it's best action game, that kind of thing, or technical achievement in an action game, that kind of stuff.
Wow.
And it's neat to
Amazing.
think that it's like this studio Camouflage and everybody that works there is so amazing, and it was like that was another sort of Assassin's Creed moment for me of getting to work with that crew. So I'm hopeful that we get a sequel to that, which would be neat to think. But I don't know.
We'll
Um,
see.
I'm still doing animation. I'm still doing video games. We still got more stuff. We got more Sonic the Hedgehog
Yeah,
games coming out.
you're all over,
Crazy.
like Cartoon
It's crazy.
Network, commercials. I mean,
Crazy.
we'll be hearing you in one alley, dark alley or another. Yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
I consider myself a very, very, very fortunate individual. It is crazy
Of
to
course.
be in my home studio. I mean, I've been doing home-based recording since 2006. So when the pandemic did hit, it was
Lockdown, yeah.
I was kind of like set up and ready for it, and I just thought, "Ooh, okay, I'll just start doing it from home now." And sure enough, we did, and to this day we still are. And I was quite fortunate to be able to still do that, and then to kind of take advantage of something and say like, I think I'm going to leave Los Angeles at a time when I can and not look
That
back.
makes
And so far,
sense. I
yeah,
mean,
so far so
I've
good.
been to LA once and it's just so too big, especially if you don't have a car. And yeah, it's all work. Like there's no community or anything. So I
Tough to
imagine Idaho
spread out, right?
is more your thing.
Yeah, well, my girlfriend lives in Montreal,
Okay.
Canada, and that's a real unique thing where you can actually walk around, go places. You can have a sense of like a village because it's so dense. And Southern California it's next to impossible to have that unless you're in a beach community. And even
Yeah.
then, most of the people in the morning leave the beach community and they go work inland and then they come back to the beach. And so it's not as if they live and work and do everything in these little pockets. It's like it's pretty it's so difficult to have that. So everybody does feel a little bit, you're on edge. Everybody's in your way and you're in everybody else's way. And
Yeah,
people can be very
yeah.
short tempered with that. So LA's it's just a lot. It was a pace, but I lived there. I grew up in Southern California from the age of 1 to
Oh,
basically
wow.
to 44.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
You've been
and
living
finally
up north for a while.
County into LA, and then now in Boise, Idaho, and I picked the right time to kind of slow down.
Of
It's
course.
like yeah, as you get up there in age, these white whiskers, they just keep happening. I
It
can't stop.
makes me think briefly. That's another Ubi game. Did you ever have a look at Far Cry 5? You know, that's like your area, Montana, that takes place in.
No, I've
So beautiful.
not played that game, but I should now
I
that
was sitting with it just last night. Like you
yeah.
can just exploring a little bit, the trees, the rivers. Oh, suddenly that was an hour and a half. Oh, I had these missions to do. It's so beautiful.
That is me like in real life. I mean, I
You're an
just a couple
outdoorsman?
weeks ago. Well, yeah, I think that's where I think because I spend all day inside a padded room with no windows. I sort of like, yeah, I think the idea of like getting outside and then just watching wildlife or just sitting on a kayak or going skiing with my sister or doing cross country skiing with my girlfriend or just getting out and like today it's snowing, it's dumping snow and it's like You just like go and
Yeah.
stare out the window and watch the squirrels kind of, you know, freak out and the birds all hide under trees and stuff like that. Yeah,
Makes
it's
perfect sense.
I've really started to appreciate the idea of like slowing down and you know just like smelling the roses, but not that there's any roses growing this time of
Yeah,
the year.
yeah. All
But
right.
yeah, it's a
That
slow
sounds
down.
amazing.
I
All
am so
right.
excited to find this stupid thing. I'm gonna find this. I'm
we'll,
telling you,
we'll find it eventually.
we'll find it. If I find it,
We'll
I'll
be
share it with you,
the
and then
world will be excited to see Roger Smith and Roger Smith
you
together.
you can incorporate it into your into the video here. It's so
Yeah,
funny. I've been
yeah.
scrolling through going, I know that I've like organized these things like in the past, and I can't
Uh,
find
yeah,
it.
yeah. We'll find
It's
it. But other than that, like, unless you have anything to add towards the end here, I think this has been a pleasure. I hope you had fun.
thank you. No, I have nothing to add. There's nothing I can talk about that wouldn't, you know, I just
Yeah,
try not
yeah,
to get in trouble, you know, with
yeah,
NDAs and all that kind of stuff. But
yeah. Of
more
course.
good stuff is in the works, and I'm excited
We'll be
to
looking
share more projects with
forward
people
to
coming up.
that. We'll be looking forward to Dying Light and whatever else there might be. But yeah, other than that, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I'm glad we could finally make it happen, and
Thank you.
I hope
Yes, finally.
you enjoyed it, Assassins. And of course, make sure to stay tuned here on the channel for more interviews with other community icons coming sooner than later, hopefully. Yeah, take care, Assassins.
La Vittoria. We'll give them
Oh
that.
yeah, yeah.
On that note.